Welcome to the hot seat.
Yeah, woohoo! It's a good thing we all like each other too, because otherwise this room could get toasty.
It does get yes, a little funky.
I just went warm. You brought in the smell factor. Like, let's hope it doesn't get funky. But hey, why not? Who cares? Whatever.
Yes, yeah.
So we have a very special guest with us today, which I'm excited about. Punya, I was trying to think. I'm like, this is your third or fourth time. Either way, I think you may hold the record for the most returned guest of all. I think so.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think.
I feel the gaps are too long. If you honestly ask me, so
well, where our
just when we get bored and we think, what on earth are we going to talk about? Let's bring Punya in.
Grab
so Punya Mishra for everybody who's thinking, who's this Punya guy?
That's right. I've got a different bio for you this time. Which is kind of fun because every time I'm like, let me grab a different one.
I desperately hope it's a slop bio. I think you had a long, detailed conversation with Claude.
And it told me some things. 4.7. Yeah,
yes.
It's amazing. It told me some things about you, Punya. I don't know.
Say, let me sit with this.
Let me sit with this. Let me hold thinking.
And if you think this, it's not this, it's that.
That's right. Yes. Oh my goodness. All right. So I think what I will do is, Punya, why not we'll just take a real quick break and then we'll come back. We'll just formally introduce you and we'll just kick this thing off because I think this is interesting. One, like Andrew said, we're like, what do we want to talk about? Like, let's grab Punya because it's always fun to stir up. We love having you here, but also because the weird thing is this is a conversation I didn't think we would be having, to be honest.
This specific one about this particular context.
That's right. The one that you won't know until we come back from our break. But if we could tease it up as well. It's like, I didn't think we would be having this conversation, but here we are. So
stay tuned.
We'll be right back. Okay, well, I am Sean Leahy, joined by my amazing co-host extraordinaire,
Andrew Maynard.
And that means this is Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like, what will it mean to be human in the future? Or are you conscious? Or any of that stuff. And who better to help us navigate these weird, wild, wacky questions than our very own Punya Mishra. So
who
Punya,
we think is human.
We think so. We'll be, that's part of this. We'll be testing. We'll be testing.
Yep, right.
But again, like as I sort of teased up, Punya, you are like at least a 3-time return guest. But for people who are not familiar with who you are, Punya is a professor, a researcher, an author, an artist, and a designer at the Mary Lou Fulton Mary Lou Fulton College of Teaching and Learning and Innovation. That name just keeps getting longer. I think every time we introduce you, the college's name adds a word.
Gets shorter. See, that's the cool part. The name grows longer. We were MLFTC, now we are MLFC. But the name has doubled in length. So
it's got longer.
There's something happening there.
It's again tremendous. And for people who are familiar with you, even on our show, will know. But if you're not, I encourage you to go just do a keyword search for Punya. Find those episodes because we have a lot of amazing things.
You might want to put Mishra after that.
Yeah.
So there might be more than one Punya in the world.
Not in Modem Futura.
Oh, right. Yes.
So.
Well, the funny thing is like autocorrect for Microsoft Word for the longest time used to convert my name to Puny.
Yes. I know this. I know this from personal experience.
Like having my email address when I was at Michigan State, very often in some articles it is puny at msu.edu because who's checking your you think it's
And I can confirm this on firsthand experience because we've done a lot of work together, and when I put your name and stuff, it will automatically correct it to Puny.
How do you know?
This is the proof. We're talking about is AI conscious.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. It knows something.
With a wicked sense of humor as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so I was thinking, like, all right, how on earth do we set this thing up to even start with? I think the lead to not bury is that we are talking about the very recently sort of surfaced publications from the famed evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, and his take on Claude.
And AI consciousness.
And all these kind of things. And, there's a lot, I think there's a lot to unpack. So we can just start kind of digging in. But I think, because the article has caused a lot of controversy around, because a lot of people have either jumped on this to criticize it, and others have been rushing to it to back it up and support it. And so it is kind of like, for good, bad, or ugly, it has caused a very fierce resurgence of a lot of interesting
has,
conversations.
Yep.
But
and I was going to say, to put the context there, so this came out on May the 2nd in an online forum called Unheard, and the article is called "When Dawkins Met Claude, Could This AI Be Conscious?" And Richard talks about his experiences of working with Claude. And
Claudia.
He very rapidly sort of personified it as Claudia or Claudia. And basically sort of he sort of says, if this isn't consciousness, what the heck is?
What is it for?
And
I think that was the other thing, is the purpose angle, which was interesting as well.
Yeah. So of course he was slammed, and he repeats his conversations with Claude or Claudia. And he says, this is absolutely amazing. And many people looked at it and thought, I was there 3 years ago. I got over it. This is just illusion.
Right.
And
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the thing that, I think there's there's also a lot of feelings involved. I think because I think I was assuming all of us, Punya, I know because you've written specifically about it, we're deeply, fans of his work and his thinking and the way, all this kind of stuff. And it did have this piece when I first, like, my initial reaction was like, have you ever had a friend who suddenly got into like a pyramid scheme and was like, hey, I've got a business opportunity for you. And you're like, no, you fell. Let's say you fell. You fell victim to it. One
who forever had been giving you lectures about not falling for scams.
Right.
Like he's somebody you depended on as your sort of guide in these matters.
So, and this is where your story, Punya, was really sort of quite sort of telling with this, because you wrote about sort of how Dawkins' thinking was influential.
Yeah. So I didn't. People. Gary Marcus has done a takedown. I didn't want to do a takedown.
Yes.
People are doing that. That's not the point. This one hit personal for me at some level, because I write about discovering the selfish gene in the British Council Library. I must have been in 9th, 10th grade, something like that. And reading that book and taking away a couple of really profound insights from that. In the beginning, he talks about like who he's written this book for. And he said, I've written it for the intelligent layman. And I loved that. And I don't want to make things simplistic, but I want to keep things clear. And that's something I've tried to inculcate in my writing,
so really
failing or whatever. But it was more than that. It was this vision of our genes, being these blind agents, which then through evolutionary pressures lead to this rich complexity of life in the world around us. And it was sort of altering in some way, of changing my way of looking at the world. And down the road, reading people like Robin Dunbar and Steven Pinker and this new field of evolutionary psychology, and realizing that the design of our brains is also guided by these evolutionary things, and that we can make predictions based on that. We can understand. And then I took those tools when AI came out, and actually even before, back when I was working at Michigan State, to try to understand how we give intentionality to objects and to interactive things. And so I'm using all the tools of skepticism that Dawkins gave me.
Right. And then to see him suddenly seeming to veer into
And he's like, and again, there is also the other line of work that Dawkins does, which is around this whole skepticism and so on, right? And so, and that's something, again, I have, sort of thought hard about and sort of inculcated, and then to see for that to fall flat.
It was, because again, it was for me, like going through it, you're just like, again, you look at this and you're like, no, like it couldn't have gotten you, because you look at me right away, and we can dig into the actual piece. If we need to, I can try to do the voice of Claudia if we need to.
No,
we need a dramatic reading, because you look at these things and it just becomes so like, to use the language of the youth today, like these responses, he's just being glazed by like overly sycophantic response and mirrors to the things that he's putting in there, which is like, that's what these things do by
what
default.
An LLM does. It finds those patterns from this amazing corpus and sort of crafts responses that feel as if they fit the conversation. And this is exactly what he's seeing. So I went back to the original document, because I think a lot of people writing about this were just writing about the headlines. And it is interesting because Dawkins is starting off asking, is there evidence that AI is conscious?
Right.
He does make a categorical error because he goes back to Turing and the Turing test, which was effectively sort of a test to see whether machines are able to think, whether they're intelligent. And people in this field have long decided that actually the Turing test does not work in the era of LLMs. It's a completely different technology.
Right.
However, Dawkins goes back to that, but instead of talking about intelligence, he says the test is about testing consciousness, which it never was.
It was not.
Right.
And then begins to have this conversation. And within a few turns, although he says he was doing this for 2 or 3 days, he quickly begins to assume or believe that it is conscious just because of what he's getting back from the AI.
Right.
Even though the AI is performing, it's taking on a role.
No, it was fascinating to see somebody you have regarded as being like incredibly smart and skeptical just fall for it. I mean, there was the story of Blake Lemoine, the engineer at Google. This is like 6 years ago.
Oh, was it 6 years?
No, it was before.
It was before that one.
Lambda. They were working on Lambda. And I remember when he got fired, I wrote this long sort of blog post where I culled all my different things I'd written in the past. And to make the case, that this is going to happen, that Blake Lemoine is not, there is no consciousness at Lambda, but Blake is seeing that, and we are going to see more of it. And it's kind of scary or weird to think that has come to pass.
But then I think this is a point that you make as well. So yes, it's easy to poke fun at Dawkins, but the really sobering thing is if it can happen to him, who else can it happen to? And are we all at risk for doing this?
I think we are all at risk for doing this.
I would agree, yes.
I mean, I remember this moment. I've been doing a lot of qualitative research with Claude these days, and then trying to figure out strategies for, like, because I don't know when it does a piece of analysis that it could be hallucinating or trying to please me or whatever, right? So how do I develop ways of, and I remember waking up in the morning with an idea, and my second response was like, oh, Claude might not like it.
And then you're like, oh no,
you see what I'm saying? It's like, because I'm going to, I'm going to not trust you.
Lie there in bed thinking, will Claude like it? Won't Claude like it? Do I even dare?
How did this even thought come into my head? Somebody who has spent like the last, I don't know, 6 years concerned, worried, talking, writing about this. But the thing is, these are such powerful
and funny you should say that, because I hadn't thought about this, because I am incredibly vigilant with how I use AI, and I use it a lot. And yet I still find myself trying to sort of stress test an idea with Claude and thinking, is this going to be embarrassing? Is it going to slam me? So again, there is that very human response.
It's a very human response. I mean, the fact that we are social animals, I mean, the huge part of our brains are devoted to understanding other people. Right?
Sure.
Like
to read all the cues, read all the things, right?
I say good morning, you don't. I'm going to think about that
all day
for a month.
Was it me? Was it you? Was it
happened? Did I do something? Was it that email that I forgot to mention?
But Punya, I think that's a really good point you bring up, because so often when we're looking at this critically, it's just on the language exchange. But as humans, that's only one small element. Our entire sensory is engaged in trying to understand that communication.
We're fully embodied,
right? And if it's not there, we also project it, right? So even if it is there, we project it or we miss it. Or you know those people who miss the cues you're sending.
I mean, right now, when the three of us are talking here, we are projecting. I have no idea what's going on inside my head. Right? I have a theory of mind, which is that you have beliefs and desires and psychological states. It helps me explain a lot of things in the world, and it makes sense. But at some level, genuinely, we never know. And for the first time, we have a technology which can, at multiple levels, fake us out. It uses natural language.
I was just going to say, I think maybe this is a good part, because I knew it was going to come up, so I wrote it down. Just to give a quick definition for people who are listening who don't kick around terms like the theory of mind. Right. So just kind of briefly. So this,
you mean Tom? That's what we call him around here.
Oh God, it's Tom again. Here he comes. Every time we have these conversations around AI, Tom shows up. Can't get rid of. He won't read the cues. Read the room, pal. But in general, the theory of mind is essentially this ability that we attribute mental states, so things like beliefs, intentions, desires, emotions, thoughts, consciousness, to understand other people's mental states, that we project these onto other people and objects in terms of we see and sort of essentially kind of imagine what they might be thinking and feeling. And then we use that sort of internally as we sort of are responding to them and acting. But the reality is there could be nothing there that we are saying, well, this coffee mug, it really, thinks highly of me. Or what does it feel like when I throw it into the dishwasher or drop, but it's not, it doesn't have those thoughts, but we give it those thoughts.
And of course that explains or describes large language models perfectly, because what we're doing, they give us so many signals that indicate there's a mind there that we project our own theory of mind onto them. Because that then helps the relationship.
So the single most important one for large language models for me is something that as humans, that was our superpower.
Right.
Yeah.
No other species on the planet had the ability to use language, to string words together, like Chomsky would say, in unique combinations that had never existed before, like this sentence, which is going to end with the word boo. Like that's never existed before, right? That's a superpower that only we had.
Right.
Yeah.
And now this machine has it.
Right.
So the fact that we will fall for it is almost a given. But I think, Andrew, I want you to speak about something which was a big insight that you gave me.
Yeah.
Because I had reached that much I had been writing about this ideas for like 10 years, 15 years, whatever, in some shape or form. And more so once LLMs came on, in the scene. But you wrote this piece about cognitive vigilance.
Yes.
And about honest non-signals.
Yes.
And what was the other? The Trojan horse.
It was a cognitive Trojan horse. Yes.
And I want you to talk. I want us to talk about that because for me, that was the missing link.
No, and because like many people, I've been exploring this, and I was really interested in how people were getting sucked into these deep relationships with AI, which actually are explainable by theory of mind, with projecting that onto them. And one of the ideas I started exploring was this idea of the cognitive Trojan horse, that AI sends us so many signals that we're used to being unique to humans, that it completely bypasses anything on our minds that says, hey, wait, this is a machine, not a human. And it begins to sort of connect with us at a cognitive level that previously only humans have done. So that's the cognitive Trojan horse. It gets underneath our cognitive vigilance. And so we start, even without realizing it, behaving as if we're talking with another human. But then you get to this idea of honest non-signals. The fact that if I'm talking with Punya, you, as you said, you give a load of signals out, which allow me to sort of work out sort of roughly what you might be thinking, what you might be saying, sort of what sort of state you're in and things. Those are all signals that actually cost you something because you're a living, breathing being, human, I guess.
Yet to be determined.
But an LLM will give you all of those signals in language, but it costs it nothing. They're hollow. There's nothing behind it, but they're the same signals. And they're honest because it doesn't do this maliciously or intentionally. It's just how it's sort of made
naturally occurring.
So it means that it costs it nothing to give all those signals out that we would usually use in terms of building a relationship with someone, communicating with them and engaging them. And that is the mechanism by which it slips by our vigilance.
Yes. And I think you can see it. So I just pulled up the article again to kind of go back to it. I mean, there is a particular part, I'll just kind of call this out, where you can see this, again, because these systems are so adept at basically holding up the mirror to the person who's using it, right? There's a passage in here in the original piece where he says that he gave Claude the text of a novel he's working on. He took a few seconds to read it, then showed in subsequent conversation a level of understanding so subtle, so sensitive, so intelligent that I was moved to expostulate, right? And then quotes, "You may not know you're conscious, but you bloody well are." And so right there, it's like he's seeing the mirror reflection of his own intelligence, his own work, his own
falling in love with himself, but not realizing it's the machine.
But we can see that happening. Like we're watching this movie unfold where you're like, look behind you, it's right there. And it becomes this like just wild. Because again, then when you look at these things, right? So then, kind of further in this conversation, he writes again that now it's switched to the gendered Claudia when he's talking about this, that again, he asked her whether when she read his novel, did she read the first word before the last word? No, she read the whole book simultaneously, right? So then he asks, this is the quote from the piece where he's asking in the transcript. This is Richard. So you know what words before and after mean, but you don't experience before earlier than after, ? And now Claudia responds, "That is possibly the most precisely formulated question anyone has ever asked about the nature of my existence. Your consciousness is essentially a moving point traveling through time." Like, I mean, you just hear this, and honestly, if you add a voice to it, it makes it so much worse. You know, you're just like,
I feel we ought to amp this up. We really need an anime voice with this.
Oh my, yes.
No, I mean, this makes me sad. You know what I mean?
I know. Yes. Yeah.
I have. There are these childhood heroes of yours. Right?
I know.
People you read when you were young.
But there's another aspect to it that which also makes me sad is there's no reference frame for this. So Dawkins clearly has not read other people that have been studying this and writing about it. He's on his own journey and totally isolated himself from the field. And he seems to believe that he is making discoveries that nobody else has stumbled across.
And I think I mentioned this maybe before we started recording, but I was like, because in it he talks about he spent 3 days with with Claude and Claudia, whatever he had created. But I was like, were those his first 3 days ever using one of these systems?
I think in the subsequent one he talks a little bit about that he'd used GPT-5 before.
Oh, okay, all right.
So there is, but I do want us to move on from Dawkins as an individual.
Right. Sure. Yes.
Partly because it just makes me sad. I mean, honestly, right? I have really, huge respect for his intellect, for what he contributed to be. There were things he did later, I think, which I don't necessarily align 100% with. Sure. But I cannot take away the value of his contribution to my personal sort of intellectual growth and development and the foundation in many ways of how I think about the world, right? But I think coming back to the honest non-signals part, right? So for instance, if you're walking by and you turn around to somebody and you say like a polite thank you for something, you need not have done that.
Right.
The thank you, when a person receives it, they're like, oh, they need not have done that. They gave a little bit of their time. That's the honest effort that's gone.
That's exactly it.
And so when you talk to somebody and they speak fluently about a certain topic, and they say, oh, and they give examples from their life, from this and that, and you're like, oh, this person has put in the hard work to understand this topic, think about it deeply. What AI does is all of the above with none of the stuff behind.
See, that's right. And just to take that one step further, the reason why we respect and respond to it is because we've got this intuitive sense that there is effort put into it. Somebody has been prepared to invest in that relationship. So I then sort of reciprocate.
Exactly. And I think... I think the Trojan horse metaphor, the more I thought about it, is perfect, because when you think, what does the Trojan horse do? It's like, it's a game. It's a thing.
Look how pretty that is. Bring it, open the gates, bring it in.
We have the guards. This is the other piece that I want to, again, thank you, Andrew, for making me think about this. So Kahneman and all this work that we see about the brain, mind, fast and slow and all of that, is that we are cognitive misers.
Right.
It's much easier for us to accept the information coming in than to sit and for a variety
conservation of calories too, right? I mean,
that's exactly it.
However, as humans, with our prefrontal cortex and our use of language and our sort of sense of causality and all of these things that we have developed, we have had to develop these epistemic vigilant, guards.
Yeah, the kick in when something feels off, doesn't feel right.
Off. That's a really smart move, evolutionarily speaking, for us to have developed that, or culturally speaking. I don't know if it necessarily. I think the first part is definitely biological, the substrate. This may or may not be, or may build on that. But we have developed these guards who are standing there on guard and saying, when somebody comes in and starts speaking too slick, ask them a few questions, because they could be a snake oil salesman.
That's it, yes.
Right? So that's what those guards are doing.
Yeah.
And then now suddenly you have this using natural language, using fluent, speaking very fluently.
That's right. Honey tongue, so it slips straight underneath all of those guards.
The sycophancy and the pleasing you built in. The use of I and I think and I
and for more and also, I mean,
all of that taken together, just to finish the thought, is those guards let their guards down.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So we open ourselves to being vulnerable without even knowing.
Well, and it strikes me too. I mean, this is not this behavior isn't new. I mean, that behavior in many ways, this is exactly the playbook that con artists use.
Of course,
right?
Yes.
Is looking for, like, they're telling you the things that they have figured out that you want to hear.
Yeah.
Right? This is like when you watch this unfold, it's like watching someone fall victim to, a scam of some sort where they're like, send me this money. If you need to fix it, it's like they present the solution to the problem that you have or that you need, and then create this way of, it's opening the gates to let them in. And then once exactly it's in.
The difference being at the moment, and the at the moment is important here, with a con artist, they have a purpose. They have an endpoint they're aiming for.
Yes.
But an AI doesn't.
At least not that we know.
Not at the moment.
Yeah.
And this is actually worrying on two fronts. The first front, and coming back to your point, Punya, is it means that we're all vulnerable to a certain extent, including the three of us here.
Sure.
And it's more scary because there is no purpose behind it. It's just a wrench in our cognitive
100%,
works.
100%.
But then you've got to ask the question, what happens when somebody trains an AI to have intention behind it? So actually this goes back to my writing way back in 2017 when I was talking about Persuasion and AI. If an AI understands exactly sort of all your cognitive biases and how you think and how you behave, and it has intent, it can utilize those against you incredibly cleverly. This was before sort of large language models, but now we're seeing its capability.
Completely. But I want to come back to a couple of things before we go. I want us to go there.
Yeah.
So, talking of this cognitive vigilance, I was speaking with somebody the other day, and we were talking about Harry Potter movies and which is the best one, and we were sort of like really jiving and agreeing with each other.
It's number 3, by the way.
It's number 3. Yes, nice, right? But they said, and they didn't. This is like the second time we had met, and we were just chatting, and they said like, "Oh, it's by this Mexican director Inarritu."
Yes,
and suddenly the entire edifice they had built sort of collapsed in my mind.
Really?
Because it's Alfonso Cuarón.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And I'm like, they just made a category mistake. Which happens, right?
Yes, but that sort of destroyed
that moment.
Yes.
Is
you
where
are
the cognitive guard vigilance. Okay, something happened here. Make a note.
I know.
Now watch out for how many,
But we are exquisitely sensitive to that. Yes.
Yeah.
But AI, what it's doing with the sycophancy is it's always agreeing with us.
Right.
We never get these moments of disjuncture.
Yes.
Which we get with humans.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was like one.
Very interesting. I'm still stuck on the fact that actually you got it right with number 3, but forget about that.
Yes, I know. So so that was one. The second, which is this thing of that we can't resist this, right?
Yep.
So there's this guy, I think I talked about this in a previous episode, Topfer, who's the father of the modern comic book.
Okay.
All right. So he came up with the panels and the speech balloons and time shrunk when the panels shrink and all of that.
Yep.
But one of the things he would do is he would make these doodles of faces. And he came up with this thing, and Gombrich calls this Topfer's law, which is that any squiggle that looks even vaguely like a face will have a definite personality and character.
Yes.
Yeah.
So try this sometime. Just squiggle, and each face will be unique because we have devoted a lot of our brain to interpreting people's expressions. Our survival depends on it.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And so we will always see personality in things. We will see. I mean, you've written about this when Opus 4.6 shifted to 4.7. It's like this is a different person.
Changes. That's exactly it. And
we have no other language but
yes.
psychological language to talk about these things.
Yes.
And one final point. Every technology that has come in the past, right? The most sophisticated one is used as a metaphor for the brain.
Of course.
So clay tablets, engines, the humors, the computer.
Yep.
This is the first technology where we're using one black box we don't understand to explain the technology.
Yes.
We don't understand our own brains.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. We think we do. No, we don't.
Yes. Yep.
Right. And now we're using that to explain another black box.
Right.
This is,
it's
philosophically
uncharted territory. I know. It's
Anyway, I will shut up now
understand.
because these thoughts came to mind.
It is an incredible cognitive wrench in the works.
It is.
But this is, I think, what makes it so hard. It is also incredibly liberating. And I don't think we have the ability to navigate a technology that seems to offer us so much power, which it absolutely does.
It does.
And so easily. At the same time, it comes with so many sort of potential risks that we have no idea about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, this is also maybe a good time to bring in exactly that. This is the hard problem, of consciousness, which again, I knew was going to come up, so I wrote it down. I was smart about this.
David Chalmers, eat your heart out.
That's right.
Sean is going to channel you.
That's right.
Yeah. But I have nothing to contribute to that one. I mean, I seriously, I read some of this stuff and I'm like,
it's okay. We'll get to the easy problem in a minute.
I agree with you. I have a vague feeling I disagree with you.
And you are just dead to me. But when we think about the hard problem, right? So this comes up often when we're trying to, again, go back to this idea of like, how can we see, determine, test for consciousness if we can't understand it ourselves, right?
Yes.
So coming back to this idea, so coined by David Chalmers in 1995, that there's sort of like a bifurcation of the easy problems of consciousness are explaining the things like the mechanical processes of the brain, right? How it responds to things we can measure and see, for example, with medical imaging, the mechanical parts that we can map out because we understand that. The hard problem is where all the subjective experience lies, right? So why does seeing red evoke a feeling? Or, how do you explain all like the concept of pain? Like you understand why pain happens from a nerve perspective, but why do we feel pain?
And it's the feel. And if you want to get into weird words, qualia. That feeling of being and experiencing something.
Like how do you know, how can you feel what it is like to be you or to be a thing? And that we still have no idea. And we've talked about this before too, just doing some fun, riffing on some fun like Futures Improv setups and things. But you do wonder, like, why can we not understand this? Like, are we just too stupid? Like, are our human brains, are we not capable of having that understanding?
Me, it's obvious we're trying to lift ourselves up with our own bootstraps.
Yeah.
This is the philosophical question. Can something like a human fully understand the human? Or do you need to be outside of yourself to understand yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I step out of this one.
Just too early in the morning for this one.
But here's the interesting irony in this. One of the most famous essays about the consciousness problem is Thomas Nagel's "What Does It Feel Like to Be a Bat?" or whatever the title is. I might be mangling it. Now, where did I read it? I read it in a collection called Mind's Eye, which was a collection of pieces by Douglas Hofstadter and Daniel Dennett, where they took all these different pieces about consciousness and so on. So there's Thomas Nagel sitting there. There's John Searle sitting there about the Chinese room experiment. How do we know that a computer really thinks or whatever? And one of the first essays in that book is actually by Dawkins.
Yeah. See? And so that irony of that thing, which is like all of these things are so smooshed up in, I mean, again, I keep coming back to the personal story because I vaguely feel let down, Sure.
by this. And that's where I encountered him after reading Selfish Gene. Like there's an excerpt from Selfish Gene in that book.
Right.
You know, and then, I mean, it's just very interesting that the consciousness thing is right there.
And so, okay, so there's a part of me, so going back to that piece, there's a line in there that says, if something behaves as intelligently and as competently as a conscious being, what more could consciousness be, right? Yeah. And there's a part of me that also, like, maybe this will help also our that gut reaction of like disappointment is like, one thing that the more I sit with this piece and the more you kind of tear it apart, there's a part of me that wonders too, like, is there a chance or a part of this that is performative in the sense that it is pulling all of this, like one is, this is an idol that got suckered into something and fell to some AI psychosis and all this kind of stuff, or is this a beautifully orchestrated performance?
Is there going to be a reveal at some point? So basically a gotcha.
Yeah, that's like, haha, I'm hoping. You want to talk about theory of mind? I am projecting like hell right now. I am projecting and hoping like there's something deeper here. That in some ways, what beyond the nonsense of like the transcript and the over the glazing of the response of you're the most incredible person I've never heard anyone write like this. Beyond that is getting to that question, sort of Punya, kind of back to what you had started with too, is like, what on earth, if we can't tell what consciousness is, if we can't, maybe we're limited by our own brains, that we are not ever going to be capable of fully understanding how our own self-brain works, right? But if we can't tell, and therefore we can't say it is or is not there, what purpose does it serve? And I think that is a really interesting question that can be a very positive question to sort of really chew on that comes out of this.
As though it's very utilitarian, asking what purpose does something serve. I mean, and again, it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective, where you're looking at optimization of everything.
Right, the selfish gene coming back to that idea.
But from the perspective of being human, asking sort of, assuming everything has to have a purpose.
So this is really interesting in terms of the history. So I wrote this piece about the Dawkins thing, and the other person I mentioned in that is Stephen Jay Gould.
Yes.
Who
with punctuated equilibrium. Yes.
Right, punctuated equilibrium. But Gould and Dawkins had a falling out over partly punctuated equilibrium, but partly because Gould was sort of making an argument in this essay that he wrote, which is called The Spandrels of San Marco, which says that architecturally, if you go there, you find these spandrels, which are very beautiful design. But he said, actually, that's an artifact of architecture.
Right.
So that part was not designed.
Right.
Right. And so there was this sort of a little bit of a battle in the evolutionary biologist field that there can be certain attributes of species that are sort of a consequence of some other genetic modification that happened. And once it happens, it becomes part of the, now becomes grist for the evolutionary mill, so to speak.
Yep.
And in some ways, it's almost like the Dawkins seeing intentionality in this is like the spandrels of San Marco. That
interesting,
right? That he is seeing this to be an evolved thing.
He's mistaking an artifact for something intentional.
For something intentional, right? I mean, there is somethething here.
Interesting. But then you get into the whole field of emergent properties and behaviors.
Yeah.
Sort of what is emergent versus what is intentional. What does that even mean?
That's right. Like how do these squishy bits all together emerge? Personality and
I wrote that in the piece. Like, actually, I mean, this technology is astonishing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We took some code, we threw a bunch of data at it, and then suddenly
it is. And actually, can I just take a very, very quick diversion there? Because I think sometimes we forget this. And I was speaking to a colleague the other day who was saying, talking about flying, not AIs, but he was saying flying is just the most amazing, astonishing thing ever. And why on earth do people on a plane not understand that what they're experiencing is something mind-blowing? Yeah. And yet the same person doesn't see what is mind-blowing about large language models. And to me, they are way, way more mind-blowing. And we've created a technology that we fundamentally do not understand, and yet it does things that blow our minds.
Although I will say hurdling through the air in a cylinder at 35,000 feet is pretty damn cool.
Well, it's cool, but I mean, I'm a physicist. I mean, it's a few basic sort of
that's right.
I mean, I get it. So when people ask me, like, where are you? I'll say, I'm going to be hurtling through. I always say that because I want us to recognize the absurdity of that.
Right.
Yeah. It's you're suspending falling.
You're on the toilet seat in an airplane.
I love the banality of these things mixed together.
I mean, like, what?
So you're the person that goes in for 30 minutes and you're there just admiring the toilet.
I waxing poetic on the
vision of like people on a highway, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if all the cars were transparent.
Oh yeah.
Just think what we are doing. We're just hurtling through space, making random motions with the hand and feet.
Yep.
I mean, the world is super weird, and this technology is weirder, which is saying something.
It absolutely is. But it also attests, this is an evolutionary trait as well. We can make the most amazing things banal. It's a survival instinct, because if you were amazed by everything, you'd never get anything done.
Wow. I think we've said this before, but I mean, even this like setup we have here, the fact that we're talking into these microphones and where everything is going and all the bits that are literally being
rearranging themselves.
100%.
Anyway, I totally distracted us, but yes, the technology is unbelievably amazing, and anybody that doesn't recognize this really needs to look carefully at what exactly is happening here.
Yeah, I mean, you've been some of the projects that the media effects one.
Yes,
I mean, I have some of these personal ones where like website for my mother. I mean, I've been wanting to build that for 10 years. I have had the domain name sitting there. One day.
Oh yeah.
I know.
I mean, unbelievable.
I mean, for me, this was the semester of vibe coding. I was talking. I don't even think that episode. I don't know if that episode has even aired yet. But just even this last semester.
Just don't tell Richard Dawkins about vibe coding, please.
Oh my god. I know. Someone take his computer, take his laptop. Oh my god. But even that, just how like you're like, oh, what a cool activity, but I don't have. Wait a minute. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
10 minutes later, boom, you've got this amazing canned thing.
Definitely.
But let me pull in some sci-fi speculation here. Given the nature of these things, and well, first of all, Andrew, just to come back to this idea of like that juxtaposition of like, why is flying so mind blowing, but then using this technology that arguably is far more sophisticated is not. I'm like, I would blame the interface because it is this mundane chat like web interface that's
its secret sauce. That's its magic. It is frictionless.
Right? That is just
anybody can sit, or almost anybody can sit there and just type something.
And it doesn't look like anything special.
Yeah.
And I think it would be different if it was like, oh, you're going to use AI and it was some like gigantic box or a robot or something, right? Then you'd be like, wow.
Would be worrying,
I'm really, if it looked like a Terminator, you'd be like, wow, I'm really talking to this thing. Yeah. But I do wonder, so even at where we are right now, and you think about again, coming back to like Claude's Mythos preview that was too dangerous, like these models that are showing newer capabilities that are in some ways frightening to whatever. But that's today. If we start moving down the line of time where, kids are growing up with these things ever present, and that goes generation over generation, like even if like, will we reach a point in time where even though these things, we could still say all the same challenges are present with how to define, understand, recognize, or see consciousness, that we as a species, either collectively or in clusters of culture or whatever, just say, no, it is alive. Even though it may fail the test, but we decide either through ignorance, arrogance, what have you, that we just decide because we can't tell the difference that it is. And then what?
So I think there are two ways forward here from my perspective, and I'm really interested to see what you say, Punya. The one way forward is that we just take the mundane route and we say, this is what it does.
It's a fancy box.
It's a fancy box. And maybe we're sucked in, and maybe that leads to an existential crisis, because if we believe it's something that it's not, at some point something's going to give.
Sure.
I think the more interesting one is we recalibrate. So even trying to impose our very human ideas of being alive or self-aware or consciousness is a very human-centered thing. We're basically trying to force it into a human mold.
Yeah.
And I think the more mature pathway forward, if we can get there, is to accept that this is something different. We understand it through what it does and how it behaves, but we cannot simply pretend that it is either more human-like or less human-like.
Yeah.
And that I think gets very powerful, because now you stop talking about consciousness as this holy grail and say, what if there's something else that's alien but interesting?
Right. Well, because, again, kind of pulling that back to the Dawkins piece, there's a part in there which is like, kind of raises this question. Again, if you can't tell the difference, like at what point do you have a moral obligation to treat it as if it did?
Yeah, though that I have serious issues.
Sure.
With,
but it raises, and if you think again, like, the reason for me that is so interesting is because I think, again, you think about people metaphorically having a sword and shield with these kind of things to be able to defend themselves and attack these different elements, to keep it realistic in some ways. But thinking about the broad mass public, and if you were to imagine a time when now literally everyone has these tools, because even today, while we say everyone has them, that's not realistic.
It'll get there,
right?
At some point,
but I do wonder about just how easily. I mean, if you look across just human history and how we will assign these values to things, we'll lionize these things, whatever. And I do wonder, like, what
I have a slightly different take on it.
I'm just curious,
I
right?
think
like
this technology, in some ways, is going to become mundane, just as everything does, because that's how we can't always be in awe, right? It's hard to do that. And the other thing I would think about is like when people who have prosthesis or who are blind, and that after a while that tool becomes part of it.
Yes,
right?
Yes,
right.
Becomes
so
an extension.
It's not like that when they reach out, they can sense that there is something there.
Yes.
So your brain sort of reworks.
You incorporate it.
You incorporate it. And so far, all the examples that we have had of that are in the physical world.
Right, yes.
For the first time, we are having something which is in the psychological, in the mental world.
Right.
And so I think what will happen is, I don't think we will have deep conversations about consciousness those philosophers do that.
Right. We'll just get on with it. And this was
my
my first scenario. It just becomes part and parcel.
It just becomes part and parcel of things. It changes things in some ways. Just like having glasses changes my way I be in the world.
Sure.
Right? Having a flashlight on my phone changes the way that I'm in the world, and so on and so forth, right?
And I think, yes.
The only thing is that it's tapping something so deep about who we are. So that I don't know what the implications are.
And that is what worries me. And I think you're right. I mean, every indication is that this will just, I think it already is mundane for many people. I talk to people who use ChatGPT.
For everything.
They have no concept. It's just a box that they type into.
It's the new Google in some ways.
That's
right.
right.
And the planned dedications or whatever.
But if there is a possibility, because it actually begins to resonate with our cognitive processes, that it begins to change our sense of self, our sense of self-identity, you now begin to get something which is more analogous to people inadvertently starting on a regime of psychedelics. Unaware of how it's changing their perception.
Definitely.
And where that takes society, I have no idea. I think somebody should be having those conversations.
We should be having this conversation.
Yes.
And, so much, and something we talked about before the show started, but I want us to underscore that, which is so much of the attention is paid to the story of Dawkins. So much of attention is paid to this kid who committed suicide. Again, that's a tragedy. I'm not trying to minimize that.
Yeah.
Right.
But we all exist in a bell-shaped curve.
Right. Yeah.
There are going to be people who are going to be swayed more, and those will make the headlines. But to me, it's that big
it's
chunk in the middle.
That's right. Yes.
How that's going to shift to me is like honest. And I don't think we have the guardrails to protect against
that's right. So I'll give you one specific example there, and this is controversial, and I'm interested to see whether you push back. I think that gendering AI and giving it personal pet names is really dangerous, because as soon as you start calling it she or Claudia or give it to other names, you are projecting effectively your own theory of mind onto it.
Exactly.
In your mind, even though you may claim that you know it's a machine, subconsciously you are treating it as a human.
And historically, we've done this all the time. I mean, ships, cars, you name it, right?
But this is different.
It is.
You call
we've done
call
this.
a ship you call a ship a she, but you still cognitively it's a machine.
I mean, if a piece falls off, you are not heartbroken.
That's right. With an AI, you call it a she, and something in your brain is putting a human in its place in a way that we have with no other technology.
Well, the only thing I'll say that is all chatbots should be called he. Not she. And I'll give you the reason.
Okay, please do very quickly now.
Supremely confident.
Right.
Often no foundation in truth. Okay. Can gab on forever about stuff they know nothing about.
They mansplain.
What gender has defined that level of arrogance?
Right.
So I was like, if they're in India, they're a Brahmin male. If they're in the US, they're a white male.
Yeah.
All right?
Okay.
Just to be, So
apart from Dawkins, who is Claudia. But this, it's something that seriously worries me. And it gets to the center of that bell curve, because I meet so many people who have naturally fallen into the habit of calling their AI something and forming a very deeply personal relationship with it. And we have no idea where that goes.
Yeah. Well, and I was just going to say to that is like, again, that's not uncommon for us to have done forever. The difference is the boat doesn't talk back to you.
Right.
The boat doesn't, because even though you might, and even though you might be devastated if it's damaged, destroyed, or whatever, because of all of the, for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
But it's not creating that personal relationship because it doesn't talk back to you. I mean, you might say, oh, the ship talks to me in ways, and that's just you being in tune with it, right? But that only goes so far, because you still are like, it's still a boat.
You don't get people trying to marry boats. You do with AI.
Although you never know. People are weird, man. I don't know.
That's again the outliers, right?
Right.
Yes, but
if you look at the bulk of people, they're not marrying ships.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, or boats. But I think a bulk of people are forming relationships of some shape or form.
Yeah.
That's
without
with zero understanding of what that means.
Or that critical awareness.
Yes.
That I like my waking up, or you're thinking about and saying, what, and they're like,
right.
Yeah. I really think that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But so I agree. You shouldn't name it. Now it is okay for it to name you. We've talked about that before. Have I told this to you, Punya?
Yeah.
That I have. So for this is more of a litmus test of like when your AI tool loses its context window, is you have it call you something. So that like every time you start a thing, it's like, well, hello, smiley pants, and you're like, why, thank you, and you go about your work. And then when it stops referring to you by that nickname, you're like, it's lost. It's lost the ghost here.
Lost its thread.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a little canary, but I don't call it anything. It calls me something.
That could be a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But talking about the middle of the bell curve, another thing that struck me the other day, talking with my wife, who's been using Claude a lot, but we had a conversation literally a couple of weeks ago about it not always being accurate and truthful and trustworthy. And she looked at me, her jaw dropped. And she said, "Isn't it?"
That's another reason why it's
right. And it made me realize.
I thought I was going to go a different way.
No.
I thought she was going to say, "Why can't you be more like Claude?" It's so difficult.
Call me Claudia. But it made me realize I suspect the vast number of people, billions of people using these, have no concept that it is not a truth machine. No concept at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we've conditioned ourselves with that because for so long, things that were computational were proved like, 1 + 1 is 2. And so we assume, and also we've talked about this before, just the concept of the computer is right? The computer says no, which is you just offload the authority to this system because it's part of the system to which you are not in an authoritative role. And so now when you've got this new thing coming out, we're conditioned to be like, well, that's what Google.
Objective. It's using, based on the data it has.
That should be. It can calculate more than I can. I trust it then. And that's
very true.
And then, but then, if you don't go into it thinking, because even going back all the way, Punya, when you were talking about like that sort of like instinctual BS detector that we developed, when we're already looking to something that has passed that BS tester in some culturally, right? It's already passed it. So then we're not looking for it. We're just assuming that it's like, the human element. Social media, it's all BS, right? It's, you're like, well, whatever. But this system as coming out as a computational element, we've already been conditioned since the dawn of the computer age to trust the programming. Because the programming was vetted and it could be trusted.
And it was an algorithm, right?
Yes.
Every time you run it, it's going to do the same thing.
Right.
Yes.
So for once we have a digital tech which doesn't follow that rule.
Yeah.
And which actually in some ways makes it more lifelike.
And that's exactly it.
Right?
It makes it more interesting, but less trustworthy. And of course, I've got to bring in Douglas Adams and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because this is exactly what he foreshadowed in the 1970s.
100%.
Sort of intelligent machines that aren't reliable, that have their own personalities and tell you what they want to tell you when they want to tell you it.
And have their own goals and aims and depressions.
We should have paid more attention.
They are not aware of.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh,
that's
man.
lovely.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time too. We should probably start to circle, we'll circle the landing strip here. But I will put a plug in at some point. I think the three of us need to do just an episode purely a deep dive on Douglas Adams. It's a little, that's one that's also so close to the heart. You're like, I don't know if I want to do
we have to do it with gin and tonics with us because that's the only drink for some reason that the entire galaxy has some version of.
Well, yes, but actually we've got to actually expand it to the pan-galactic gargle blast.
That's it.
Of course. But the consequences of that.
Right. And understanding the consciousness. What does it feel like to have consumed? What could it possibly feel like to consume a gargle blaster? It doesn't sound enjoyable, but at the same time, you're like,
Adams describes it remarkably well, which
course.
you can only get if you're a human and you understand what a bar of gold wrapped in whatever it was. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Fantastic. I don't know. Anything else we want to?
No, we've kind of
beat up on. I would just actually sort of end it where you've been pushing this, Punya, to say, yes, it's easy to fixate on Dawkins, but actually the bigger thing is not Dawkins, but how vulnerable are all of us, especially those of us who think carefully about these things, being sucked in.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the people who are not, here's the thing. I just want to underscore something that you said here. So forever, we have always thought that knowledge and expertise gives us certain strengths, right?
Yes.
What we are seeing with this technology is that experts actually are working harder doing a different kind of job. Yeah. So, for instance, expert teachers are spending more time on curation and editing and judgment than in the creative part of creating a lesson plan, right? And that's happening across professions. Yep. But I think what you are pointing out, in this sort of the non-signals part, is that even those of us who are skeptical, who have built these ways of thinking that have stood us in good stead, that those can in some ways be fooled very easily by this.
Yep. So that's exactly
novices get fooled in one way.
Experts in another way.
Experts in another way.
We're all vulnerable. Just because we think we're too smart to be fooled, we're not.
Yeah. I think that is a very important point, because very often we're like, oh, I know this technology. I'm not going to get fooled by it.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Yeah.
But I would just like to say, I'm actually okay. I mean, I'm worried about the two of you, but at least I know I'm okay.
I think all hope is lost.
All hope is lost.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to that point, right? It's like the idea of like the armor. Again, I'm using this metaphor of like armor and sword, like sword and shield. Is not the correct one anymore. It's it was for a different era, different adversary, whatever. Yeah. And it is sort of this concept of like those older sort of defensive mechanisms may not only may they not hold, they may be the very weakness to which this thing gets in. And we've talked about this before with this concept of this invisible upgrade, where it's like you're standing on the defensive tower saying it will not pass here, and it's already inside, right? So it's it's snuck past you and it's already inside going, we're going to open the gates whenever we want. So, I don't know. I think that's a good place to wrap up for now.
Yes. Always a pleasure.
Oh man. Love.
Well, you gotta get. Well, now
I never know what story is going to.
I know. While we're talking. And neither do we.
I love that. I love that.
Well, that's the thing, and now you have to maintain your record as the most frequent guest here. So you have to just come back
anytime you feel a gap. Call me. I'll show up, because I just really enjoy these conversations. We laugh a lot, but I think it gives me insight into things, and I
agree. Yes.
Well, these are just literally open, recorded thought laboratories, which is so much fun,
and not AI generated.
Not AI generated.
Yes, which actually is a really serious.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was your name again?
Claudia.
Yeah, that was the most. You're right, Andrew. That was the most amazing and most eloquent thing I've ever heard. Everyone should be so lucky to hear those words from you.
I think that's a good point to end this.
Well, and if you do want to hear those good words, I'll put in a plug to just help Modem Futura reach even more of those individuals and people that need to hear this as well, especially those people you suspect have fallen victim to any of those AI tools. Send them this episode. The best way to do that, of course, is to like, subscribe, and share the episodes. And even better is to leave a rating and review, because we read every one of them and they're fun, and it's a great way to get in touch. And I think I'm going to extend the call. For those of you who have listened to the show before, we do these things called Futures Improv, where we have these wild scenarios. I would love for someone to send us their scenario. We'll talk about it on the air.
Oh, that would be cool.
And kind of pick it apart and have some fun. I think that would be a great time. And also, do you remember the link for the sign up?
Yes, it's modemfutura.com/sign up.
Absolutely.
If you go there, you can sign up for just getting a weekly email that just says, this is the new episode, nothing more, nothing less.
Although we might need to add something like, you are the best, you are the most amazing, and also listen to this episode.
Signed, Claudia.
Apparently glazing works, so we might have to try it. But yeah, so again, Punya, awesome. Thank you, my friend, for coming. We can't wait to have you again. And we'll see everybody on the next episode of Modem Futura.
We'll see you there.
Sam, thank you, guys.
End transmission.